I think we first met in person at your new office, right?
Yep.
So you just got an
That's right.
office over on Union Street back, what was that, a month or two ago?
Yeah, I guess when we locked it down starting in March. So we're coming up on almost 2 months there,
Uh-huh.
which has been really fun.
And you had, is the company's been going for a little longer than that, or?
Yeah, so basically I left CashApp in October and started going off doing this stuff and officially incorporated the company in January, raised some money, and have just been going since then.
Nice. And what was like I guess I'd actually like to hear it, back it up a little bit. So you were at Cash App for how long? For a while?
Yeah, I was at CashApp about 2.5 years.
Okay. And were you into Bitcoin stuff before then?
Yeah, definitely. So yeah, my Bitcoin story goes back to probably 2016 is when I first got curious. Someone told me that I asked a respected mentor of mine what he thought of Bitcoin. He said, well, I don't know about Bitcoin, but there's definitely something with blockchain technology. And so I was like, oh, okay, that story. But at the time I didn't know, so I bought like, $20 of Bitcoin.
Yeah.
Started following it, and then in 2017 got more interested into it as it got more popular. Kind of got sucked into all of crypto, ICO tokens and everything, trying to, thinking just I was totally lost, just didn't know what I was doing.
What were you like looking at charts or meeting teams or?
I was just like
going on
putting my
exchanges?
own money, like trying to buy these like tokens, I just thought that I was very misguided. I would say I didn't have like a lot of the people I sort of follow now and listen to now. I just never even heard of them because I was just coming, at the time I was playing baseball.
Oh, you were still in baseball at that point?
Yes, that's right. So
Oh,
I was
wow.
in the
Okay.
minor leagues with the Cardinals.
Uh-huh.
And yeah, that was my last, 2017 was my last of 4 seasons playing pro baseball with them.
Oh, wow. Wait a minute. So there's actually so much to the story.
Yeah, I guess we can.
We got to back it up even further. So you're playing with the Cardinals. So
we could go back to college.
Okay, let's go back to college.
So back in college, I studied computer science and played baseball.
Okay, both like very super hardcore at each.
Yeah.
Okay.
Pretty much.
And you kind of thought you were going to do baseball. Like what was the thinking?
Yeah, I wanted to make it in baseball. I wanted to do that and try to be an all-star, superstar baseball player, and had the opportunity to start going down that path after college, where I don't know if you're familiar with the minor league system in baseball.
Just
but
a little bit.
You get drafted onto a team. So I got drafted by the Cardinals, and then you have to make it through their levels of minor leagues. So, they put me out in State College, Pennsylvania in the rookie league. And then the next year was Peoria, Illinois for like low single A, and then Jupiter, Florida for the next level, and then Springfield, Missouri. So you're going kind of these random towns that get better and better as you progress. And yeah, I made it about 4 years doing that, but ultimately just didn't quite have the numbers or the stats to make a career out of it.
I'm just trying to make sure we get this. Yeah.
Oh, are we going? We're going?
Yeah,
Okay, good. So that takes us to like 2017 when.
And you're studying computer science, and are you hacking on stuff, or like I guess baseball must be a full-time career,
Baseball
right?
became full-time after college. So I wasn't doing any coding or computer science or anything. I just was totally, it was full-time baseball. The brain took a little bit of got a little rusty, I would say, but had a great time just focusing on baseball.
Right.
But then 2017 came around, and Bitcoin and crypto became pretty mainstream, and I had already been following it a little, so that's when it started pulling my interest in, and was fun to do that. But then I ultimately got cut from the Cardinals in the end of the 2017 season. So.
And how does that work? Is that based on some stats, or you kind of knew it was coming, or?
You kind of know it's coming. I mean, in that last season, towards the second half, I wasn't playing every day. My stats clearly weren't there. You could see they were giving opportunities to the younger, more promising players. So you kind of know it's coming. And it was kind of nice, honestly, because it was like, okay, it's time to move on. Baseball was always a part of my life, but doing it full time, it was missing out on all this other cool stuff.
Right.
So it was very tunnel vision at the time, but now there's a lot a lot more fun stuff out in the world. So
right. But to do like computer science at, a fairly, I'd say a fairly high level now, coming after doing, sports and not doing any of your CS background, was it a rusty thing you had to kind of ramp back up on?
Yeah, definitely. So it literally felt like grinding the gears of a rusty bike, trying to get back like programming and doing analytical thinking.
Right.
But there was, I had many years of like base, even back in a couple of years in high school of doing this stuff. Mm-hmm. So it came back after not too long, and I was able to dive in and start trying to build stuff.
Were you building stuff around Bitcoin at that time, or you were following the Bitcoin stuff and all the different tokens, but doing other projects?
So I was following the Bitcoin stuff and like trying to make money, just like buying, basically trying to convince my family and friends that like Bitcoin's the future. And it's, I was totally Bitcoin pilled in 2017 because I learned about the Federal Reserve and how that stuff works. And I was just like, okay, this is going to be it.
So you had come to that conclusion and you weren't involved in any of the other ICO stuff? Because a lot of times like people are like, oh, well, Bitcoin's cool, but you can actually build stuff in these other things.
I just didn't know. I mean, I was just like, oh, that sounds interesting. Maybe I'll buy some of it. And, I had no ability to build anything or ability to market or anything. And so I was just a kind of a passive investor, I would say, which I think is a funny term because Bitcoin is money. It's not something that you should see as an investment. But anyway, so yeah, but then after baseball, then I was like, okay, let's go and try to learn the programming side.
And that was like you were going to reinvent around a career in programming? Was that what you had in mind?
Sort of. I kind of was like, okay, I'm going to try to figure out this programming side of Bitcoin. Mm-hmm. And then sort of there's a lot of great stuff online, textbooks that are free and stuff. So learned the programming side. Tried to build some things. The first thing I built with Bitcoin was this little lottery website.
Is it one I might have heard of? Or?
No, you've never heard of it. It's never caught on, but it was a really cool exercise in learning how to just spin up a website and have a wallet that can receive and send programmatically. And ultimately, by the time it came to launch this thing, I was like, oh yeah, this is illegal, so I can't do this. And so I never really launched it, but gained some valuable experience that then I was able to be like, okay, maybe I'll try to do this professionally. And got turned down from like 6 companies. And finally, BitGo took me on as an entry-level engineer, basically. Mm-hmm.
And was that because you'd already kind of understood Bitcoin and that was something that they were focused on? So
they're a Bitcoin and crypto company, and the thing I was able to show them the thing I built, and they thought it was actually pretty neat, technically.
The lottery thing.
Yeah, because it was used type of managing wallets in a nice way, and it got me in the door there, and ultimately that's where I started doing programming in a professional setting.
And was it pretty easy to, like, once you got into a professional setting, easy to kind of get your bearings on how to help Bitcoin from a professional set? Because you were both kind of learning.
Yeah, not really. It was tough. The first thing was just being in an office all day. I was just like, this is terrible. And the commute, I was like, this is life now? And I just remember a moment where it was really sad because I was like, But, and then the other thing is just learning how to do things like using Git, Git and GitHub. And I had just never done that. And so I'm sitting next to Mark Earhart, also known as Merch. He's a very well-known Bitcoiner, very well-respected, super smart. And I'm just bugging him every 5 minutes. Hey, how do you do this like really basic thing? And he was very patient with me and kind of helped me get my bearings. But once I got my bearings there, was able to start contributing and worked on some of like the wallet infrastructure there, both the hot wallets and the cold wallets. Because BitGo does the wallet software for a lot of these exchanges all over the world. So that was super interesting to get into all that.
Nice. And then from there, were you, how did you transition from there to CashApp? Was that a pretty direct or obvious step for you?
So, yeah, I was at BitGo. They're very, they supported all the coins, right? And so
was that contentious? Because I think there was some split ideology, right?
Yeah, they're definitely. I mean, that's a huge thing for any company. They start off in Bitcoin, and then it's sort of like there's this allure to get into Ethereum, and then the next was Solana, whatever the next one is, and it becomes this thing where if all of a sudden that becomes part of your business model, you can't just stop at 1, 2, 3. Now all of a sudden, Justin Sun from Tron is paying you $1 million to support Tron on the platform.
Right.
And then the next thing is, Craig Wright from BSV is going to pay you $3 million to support BSV. And so it becomes this just slog on, or it's this allure of like getting paid to support these things that, as there's the sliding scale of people that are doing interesting things and doing things that are not necessary or even to the point of scamming, and there's a whole spectrum.
Yeah.
And as a business, you can get sucked into being very crypto and supporting everything. And as an engineer on that business, I was looking at, the volume was all Bitcoin. Like it was 90% Bitcoin, but these projects would come and they would pay to get listed.
Right.
So they pay you a lot of money.
Yeah.
And so it was hard to, I think as a business person, it's hard to turn that down. And so then as an engineer who, I get tasked with working on like the EOS indexer, and it turns out the full node for EOS doesn't work. Like the network goes out of sync every 30 minutes. And these you have these in, that's where I sort of started seeing that a lot of these altcoins just don't have the same quality of engineering that Bitcoin has. And I wanted to shift my career back to Bitcoin. And that's where CashApp, they were Bitcoin only. Obviously they had a fantastic product inspired by Jack Dorsey. So I was like, all right, I'm going to try to go there.
And did you know some people there from already your kind of being in the ecosystem?
Yeah, I knew someone who used to work there and was able to connect with Miles Suter through my other friend, Clay Robbins. And yeah, I was able to just apply and try to get onto their wallet, the Bitcoin wallet team there, and it worked out to get in the door there. So
that's cool.
Which was super fun working there. I mean, that place is a great place to work, and just got to work on the Bitcoin wallets there and to be very focused, building out. And CashApp is one of the biggest Bitcoin wallets in the world in terms of volume. So got to be right on the front lines, like building that out, which was super fun.
Yeah. And it feels like Square/Block is one of these companies it's never going to compromise, right? It's going to be Bitcoin and traditional financial services and Bitcoin and kind of nothing else, right?
It's incredible to see Jack Dorsey take his stance and just not compromise. And it's hard to do that because even internally, the whole time there are people that say, oh, why aren't we doing NFTs? When Ethereum NFTs were becoming popular, why aren't we doing this? And Jack's just very mission driven, and it makes a difference because you look at a platform like Coinbase, and you go on Coinbase, you can't even find Bitcoin.
Right.
Like you see all these other coins, and you're like, what is going on here?
Right.
And that's like the slippery slope of losing your mission, I guess. So.
Right. Do you follow much of the kind of the current stuff going on with, I don't know, like Coinbase? Aren't they moving offshore or something? Or they're... Yeah,
it seems. I'm sort of seeing that where it sounds like, I mean, the regulatory environment is just difficult because there's not the clarity for all the stuff they're trying to do. And so I get it why they're moving away. And yeah, it's regulation is just a slog,
But it's a slog that for, I guess, a business like Square Block, it's a slog that's worthwhile, right? You go through the regulation, you get the licenses you need, and you're not going to get slapped with something out of left field, right?
I mean, maybe. Who knows? Well, that's what we're, if the government comes out and says, make some egregious law about self-custody or Bitcoin, like Block has to comply.
Right.
Kraken has to comply. So hopefully it doesn't get to that.
Is there something like that on the table right now, or you're just saying like in some dystopian future that could happen?
More of some dystopian future, but I don't think it's too unrealistic. I mean, there's already been stuff with things like the travel rule. I don't know if
What's the travel rule?
The travel rule is something where there's an existing rule, financial rule, where if you're an institution like holding money for someone and you're sending it to another institution, you need to tell that other institution information about the person who you're sending the money for. And you need to know, like,
so the person, you're like KYC, and you need to tell.
There's something about that where you exchange, and it's, I'm not an expert on this, but it's something where you have to give up the info of your users and then figure out where it's going, and it's almost kind of impossible to comply with for Bitcoin and stuff, because if you're just sending to an address, like, you don't know what that address is,
right?
And you're supposed to know somehow. And so I think, luckily, it seems like there are a lot of good folks doing good lobbying for Bitcoin.
Who are the main kind of entities that do that?
I think there's Coin Center or something. And it's been cool to see. I don't know if it was last year, there was some bill that there was, 2 sentences about something about Bitcoin mining or Bitcoin nodes, and it held up the whole bill for like 2 weeks or something, which was kind of cool to see, because it actually shows that, the Bitcoin people have some weight that they can throw around in politics.
Yeah. It seems like it's getting to be maybe a bit more so. I mean, I don't know. I don't consider myself an expert at, politics and the agendas of everybody, but it seems like I'm hearing more people talking about it and sort of, let's say, being pro Bitcoin while having kind of a, major political office. I don't know why that is, if that's something that is, there's already support, or there's somebody who's supporting them or kind of helping them kind of understand or educating them about how it can be helpful. But it feels like there's a little bit of positivity, at least.
I think there is. I think because it's popular among the people. I think you have Congress people who are holders of Bitcoin, or their families are, and stuff like that. And so it's slowly infiltrating, I think, the mind, and as also the younger generations coming up, and we're more accepting of technology, I guess. And so I'm optimistic that the regulatory environment won't get too crazy, but I think the U.S. government is in a tough spot in terms of they have a lot to lose with the position of the dollar. And historically that means that they're going to try to enact some type of financial repression, which would involve trying to harm, outflows into Bitcoin.
Right. So kind of the choke point stuff that people are talking about.
Exactly.
But so far, it seems like I don't know, at least my read on it is everybody seems to agree that Bitcoin is a commodity and not a security. And so any of the choke point stuff that I've heard at least seems to be mostly focused on things that are, have not yet been decided that they're securities or not.
Possibly. The thing I worry about with Bitcoin is if they come out with some law with somehow saying you can't have self-custody. You need to hold your coins like with a regulated entity, which would just be absurd. Like, that's total violation of free speech.
Right.
So if they try to fight that war on custody, that could get pretty interesting.
Right.
I think we're going to win, but it'll be interesting.
And so
inconvenient, I would say.
Yeah, probably a lot of thrashing, but
yeah.
Ultimately, I mean, I think there's a lot of people who value, I mean, the whole spirit of the U.S. and America was kind of founded on that kind of freedom. So hopefully there's enough people who will harken back and remember kind of the reason we're all here.
I think so. Yeah. I think it really comes down to freedom of speech. And ultimately, I think money is speech, code is speech. And that's the First Amendment. So now so hopefully we can rally behind that and, have some freedom.
So I want to kind of continue on with your career, because I think, so you were at CashApp, you worked on CashApp for a while, and then I'd heard, I think Max was saying that are you one of the largest Lightning routers today? Yeah,
so our node is one of the bigger Lightning nodes. Tons of connections, routes a lot of payments.
And so can you talk me through, how did you come to be in that state?
Yeah, so just as a hobby, I started putting my own coins onto this node. And what that involves is you get a server running. You can run it at home or you can run it in the cloud. You download one of the Lightning node implementations and you just put your coins on your node. You start opening channels with other node runners. You set fees and then you get paid to route payments. And then you try to convince people to connect with you. You connect to more people. You can, as many coins as you're comfortable putting on this machine, you can get more and more connections and be a quality service provider for Lightning.
And is this just like you don't need a particularly beefy machine, or you have a lot of inflows and outflows, so these connections, you need like super serious network card, or how?
The machine, it's not that crazy. I mean, you want, like, some people are able to run a good node on a nice Lenovo ThinkPad. Like that itself can be a solid node.
So computationally, it's pretty
computationally
minimal.
it's not that bad.
But like network, I guess having a bunch of connections are you talking like hundreds or thousands or dozens or?
I mean, my node is really big and it has 1,300 channels, so that's not that many.
And is each channel like a WebSocket or?
Each channel is it's a bilateral Bitcoin, a shared Bitcoin allocation with another entity. And so it just exists on the blockchain where you've locked up money with them. And then you have an open, you know each other's IP address. So then your nodes are always communicating. And every once in a while, when someone wants to try to do a payment, your nodes will ping each other and coordinate these.
Okay. So only at the time you're doing the payment. Otherwise you're just agreed upon that locked kind of.
Yeah. It's just kind of sitting there and you're waiting to see if anyone wants to try to route a payment. And if so, you just need to be online. So you need to be online, and then there's all this network gossip going on to figure out, okay, everyone's always sending out gossip about the state of the network. So you're always listening to that.
Right. And it's just like your home internet connection, or you have it in a data center?
So, I mean, I have it in the cloud, so it's in a data center.
Yeah.
And because you want good uptime, you want backups, you want like a static IP address.
Yep.
You don't, it's a public thing, so you don't really want to, if you're running on a home node, you want to go through a VPN. So you're not advertising your location.
Right.
So I started just doing this and slowly put my own funds on it, got some family members and we put some more funds on it, and then started offering services around it. So there's it's a really interesting network in terms of the liquidity, because liquidity on the Lightning Network kind of has a price, in the sense that it's valuable to have coins pointed in the right place at the right time. And so you can kind of go buy liquidity if you're good at it, and you can sell it. And if you sell it for more than you bought it for, you're making a spread.
Right.
So there's kind of these arbitrage opportunities available. There's also just, if you have a lot of connections, you become more valuable because there's more possible routes that you can service. And so it's a super interesting, very complex and emerging network.
And is it kind of changing really quickly? Like day by day, there's a lot more of these nodes of your scale trying to come on and compete for mindshare, or it's more like there's a few of these things that are kind of at some amount of scale and you kind of all talk to each other? Or
I would say the latter. It's moving, it's gradually evolving, but there's not a ton of change day by day.
So you kind of have it, you sort of set it and forget it, more or less.
Yeah, definitely. You set it and forget it. You kind of know who the other top nodes are.
You guys all in like a chat group together or something?
There's a bunch of Telegram groups. I'm familiar with a lot of the other top nodes. We talk with each other about stuff, and it's super fun. I mean, and there's a great if you were trying to get started on this, there's a great group called PlebNet, which is a group of hobbyist node runners, as well as all the professional ones are in there as well.
So hobbyist meaning they're not trying to do it. They're not trying to make spread on it. They're just trying to contribute resources.
Well, they are trying to make spread.
They are, okay.
So it's someone who might have, 1 or 2 Bitcoin. And it's harder if you don't have a lot of capital, because there's kind of an exponential, there's sort of a Metcalfe's law where your value that you can provide is proportional to the square of the number of your connections. So as you can have more size and more channels, you become exponentially more valuable as a router.
So what are the big guys doing? Like 1 or 2 Bitcoin might be a small hobbyist, and then are the big ones, are they dozens or hundreds of Bitcoin? Or
the biggest node, I would say there's probably 25 to 30 folks that have 30 or 30 plus Bitcoin on their nodes. There's probably 3 companies that have 100 plus Bitcoin on their nodes. And then there's probably 1,000 or maybe 100 folks with 10 Bitcoin and 1,000 folks with 1 Bitcoin, something like that.
And is everybody using similar software? Because you mentioned if you can buy and sell and kind of arb the difference there, like buy and sell liquidity, is that an algorithm that you wrote that's proprietary to your stuff, or do you sort of open source it and give it to everybody and sort of may the best node win? Or?
So there's a combination. The people generally run LND, which is the basic node implementation, but then everyone's got their own proprietary stuff they use on top of that. And there are open source scripts. So I use a combination of open source stuff that other people have written. And then I've also written a bunch of my own scripts to do various things that are proprietary. I mean, nothing's that crazy. I've talked about a lot of it where you're essentially, yeah. And then the other thing is one of the things that I built is a swap service and a selling of channels. So you can make a payment to our node and we'll just open a channel in your direction, which is useful for new merchants or people that are always needing to reliably receive. They need somebody to point coins in their direction. So the swap or buying channels is the way you can do that. And then we also have more for companies is a lot of companies are Lightning only. They don't actually have on-chain support. And so they'll use us to help, receive on-chain deposits to their Lightning users. Right. To just convert it back and forth. There's just basically some friction between converting between Lightning and on-chain, and we help solve some of that.
Right. And so is that kind of, you were doing this as a hobbyist, did you end up getting to be a pretty big node before you decided you wanted to go in kind of full-time on this and make a company out of it?
Yeah. So, I started getting the node going as the node got bigger and I saw there were opportunities for these extension services on top of it is when I was like, okay, I'm going to probably leave and do this full time. And yeah, that's when in October left CashApp. And at CashApp, I had been working on getting the Lightning, doing the CashApp Lightning nodes. So we had launched, right before I left, we launched Lightning support finally, like send and receive over Lightning from CashApp, which was great. And since October, I've been trying to do my own stuff, building some tools for node operators. Right. And other stuff as well that we can get into.
Yeah. Well, that's what I'm interested to hear, because it sounds like there's a lot of potential opportunity in kind of this core, run a node, build a bunch of services around that, and, sort of help maybe merchants in different ways. But then we talked about, the other day when we were hanging out, we were talking about some of your ideas around marketplace stuff on Nostr and some of the ordinals inscription stuff that you're doing. And so how do you sort of think about, like, do you see your main thing still as kind of the node plus services, and then this other stuff's like kind of experimental, or do you see yourself getting pulled towards some of these other areas, or sort of how do you think about the whole kind of the composition of the things that you're focused on or that you and the team want to achieve?
Yeah, so pretty much in around January, so sort of started realizing that we were doing very well within the Lightning Network, just being one of the top nodes. And there was a bit of a ceiling though in terms of how much value you can provide to the Lightning Network, because the Lightning Network is pretty small right now. And so basically the thought was, okay, we do think Lightning Network is going to keep growing. It might take a long time to get to where just being a Lightning services business is actually big enough to be pay for more than, you know, half of a meal every day, you know? So, started thinking about where is this growth going to come from? And to me, the most exciting places of growth are AI and Nostr. And then additionally, everyone started getting really excited about ordinals and inscriptions. And so we have played around in all of those three, trying to see what sticks. And anything that we build some software for that is useful can fit into, to me, what our company is we do software. And so if it can fit into the API,
right,
you know, hopefully it's ideally it's connected to something around Lightning and Bitcoin, because that's my expertise. That's what most of the infrastructure is. But if it touches Lightning and Bitcoin, like, it can fit into the API. You know, we could bring it under the umbrella. So
is it almost more like, do you think of this, if it structurally as like a lab with a portfolio of bets, and you're kind of going to see what really gets a lot of momentum to double down on? Or
that is kind of how it's our company is turning out, I would say. And yeah, which I don't know if it's the right move. I mean, I've never ran a company before. People are, you know, my dad tells me I need to focus, do one thing very well. And I'm like, well, what if that one thing is software? Yeah, you know,
what if it's human ideas?
Yeah, exactly. So, and I love experimenting with things and doing random stuff. So,
right. Well, I mean, I think the idea, you know, at an early stage, you know, finding something that like connects with a market that's growing fast is important. But there's a lot of companies that get started and then end up just, you know, a bunch of people working together on a bunch of things, and they kind of notice something new and emergent that maybe wouldn't have been big enough to start a company around, but everybody's like really excited about it. And that thing is just kind of taking everybody's mental energy and attention and interest. And so then everybody starts like doubling down on that. And then sort of the company becomes that. And I think most companies end up kind of navigating, not even necessarily intentionally changing what they're doing, but kind of navigating toward where they see energy in the market. And so I think I kind of like your overall approach of kind of doing what you feel like and listening to where there's energy, and maybe not getting too focused before you know what is going to work. And in most companies, I mean, you think about like you were talking about Square, you know, I think when Square was started, it was really this piece of hardware, and it enabled like food truck merchants to plug into an iPhone. My guess is that's like a vanishingly small portion of the business today, plugging in little squares into iPhones, right? Like,
yeah.
the point of sale system and the CashApp and all kinds of other stuff. And it's not necessarily that other thing wasn't good. It was enough to get started, but that's not really what the focus is, right? So I think it's kind of a natural.
I think that's a great way to put it is listening to the energy of the markets and what starts. Something else I heard is make it pay. So yeah, we could triple down on being a Lightning router, but if you front run that opportunity too much and you can't make any money from it, and maybe that opportunity is correct, but you're 6 years early, you lose. And so when the ordinals is a great example of this, because I've been following the ordinals project for about a year. Didn't know it was going to turn into. I remember Casey mentioning you could do like inscriptions, which he hinted were the same as NFTs, and I was like, I didn't know what it was. I was like, so dude, what are ordinals for? He's like, I don't know. And then seeing that get released, and then realizing that all of these degens from Ethereum, Solana, and there was this NFT market that I thought that, like, I always thought NFTs were kind of stupid, to be honest. And I still think they are stupid.
Says the creator of Astral Babes.
Yeah, I still think they are stupid. But I think also, keeping up with the Kardashians is stupid, but people love it. Like, it's, you know what I mean? So stupid does not mean necessarily, not fun. So I think stupid and fun can go together.
Yeah.
But seeing people just get so excited about inscriptions on Bitcoin and then realizing this just opened and we have, we can be a first mover and have a first collection. That's where just sprinted on it. And actually it was just me at the time. So I just didn't have any employees or anything. Yeah. Sprinted on it. And I had been so excited with the AI art stuff.
Yeah.
Like I was spending like an hour a day on Midjourney.
Oh yeah.
Just generating images. And I was like looking, I was like, this is so cool.
I thought I just saw, was it July 2022 is when that was
something
launched,
like that.
Which is not even a year.
I know.
That's, what is it, 9-10 months?
I mean, Midjourney to me is one of the coolest things I've ever. So, I mean, because it's, there's so many ideas in my head about art.
Yeah.
And you can just give it a prompt and it expresses the idea that you are trying to convey. Yeah. And so I've spent so much time just generating these, Mother Gaia goddess thing, or like fire, water, yin yang, like these crazy concepts that I've loved that you can express, and it helps you express them. And it's so beautiful, I think. And
do you have something in mind when you're starting? You have something in mind that you want to create?
Yeah, definitely.
So you kind of want it to look a certain way, and does it just like surprise you, or do you usually get kind of where you wanted to go with it? Or
you kind of learn different triggers and keywords. So, cosmic is a word that I really liked because it would bring this airy, galaxy type of feel, and then you can figure out what words give it what themes. Yeah. And then put them together. And so it's this iterative process. And that's why Midjourney is so good, because they designed it with that iterative process in mind, where you do your prompt, it gives you 4 options, and then you can upscale one, or you can regenerate, see some more. Right. So just playing with that, I was like, gotta do something with Midjourney. And actually had just hacked away. This was back before the Astral Babe stuff was hacking around on Midjourney and trying to have a way to have it post to Nostr. So now we actually have this little widget that we haven't released yet, but my buddy's using it. He has this account on Nostr. It's called What's This Guy Doing? And he does fake pictures of Guy Fieri, the chef. That are all like Guy Fieri as a baby eating a popsicle, like sad Guy Fieri who spilled his beer. Like,
hey, do they look like Guy Fieri?
It's like themed Guy Fieri. Guy Fieri riding a purple ostrich. And so you guys should follow, because
But does it? So what's the account called?
It's called Akin for bacon, and. Anyway, but the point is, he's funny, he's hilarious, and he has a funny obsession with Guy Fieri. But the point is, he has this little tool we built where directly from Discord you can just click an emoji and it'll post to your Nostr account. So anyway, where are we going with that? Yeah, just
so you were playing with the Midjourney stuff, and is the Midjourney stuff like its own generative models, like totally independent of like Stable Diffusion, or are they kind of like an interface on top of some of the Stable Diffusion stuff?
I don't know. I think they have their own model, and somehow they've trained it to have a certain feel, because it has definitely this cool feel that's different than out of the box Stable Diffusion or DALL-E 2. Right. And I know actually what somebody did is they took Stable Diffusion and then they tuned it based on a bunch of Midjourney images. So now there's an open source version of something. It's called I forget what it's called, but it kind of has the feel of Midjourney. But I'm pretty sure Midjourney is sort of a proprietary model right now. Right. But yeah.
Do you end up using the discovery features of Midjourney much? Like if you're just cruising through the channels, you can see the prompts that other people use, and you can see the output and be like, oh. Maybe like Cosmic, you're like, oh, I saw that, Danny just did this thing with Cosmic and it's cool, so I'm gonna like adopt that. Do you notice other people there who are really good at prompting?
Definitely. I haven't had as much time lately, but early on when I was trying to discover stuff, I would. And the other is there's some good social media accounts on Instagram where they'll post their themes and sometimes share their prompts. But also, like, a lot of people want to keep their prompts private,
right?
Which is an interesting concept as well. But yeah,
I'm kind of intrigued by the idea of, like, there's all this, all this excitement around creating these images and sharing them on existing social networks, which I think is fine and interesting. But then there's also all of this kind of intellectual horsepower that we collectively put into these things to try to coax something that we want out of them, or something that we do that turns out to be really exciting. And we don't really have like a place to go to share and discover the prompts that lead us to the magical moments, right?
Yeah.
And I kind of feel like that's a new type of sharing unit that nobody's really built, like, the place to do that, right? There's a bunch of places you can kind of do parts of that, but like the place to make it really good.
So maybe what we need to do is change up this bot and have it so that it posts the prompt and the image to Nostr.
Mm-hmm.
And just let people do that. But then we need to figure out the curation of the content. Or maybe there's some hashtag we can have it post with or something. So that then what's the best, because I was trying to figure this out on Nostr. What is the best way to find themed curated content?
Themed. So I guess, the hashtag has some theming to it. Is that different than what you have in mind?
I guess does the hashtag work well as a, I guess what I've been trying to think about is how can I go on Nostr and just, I want a feed of all Midjourney images. What's the best way to find that or curate that? Like, is there a way of...
I guess you would need somebody to opt into, like, posting it in that way, right? Like, to post it with a prompt or to add the hashtag.
So I think that's one way, because the other way would be you create a predefined list of good artists who are doing that content. And another way is you incentivize curation somehow, which I was trying to think about. Is that a viable thing where if you could somehow have every, people who are curators who are on Nostr all day, they see something, ooh, that would go well at, Midjourney chain or whatever they want to call it. And they just, if they add Midjourney, whatever, and enough people add it, then that account will repost it. Right. And if it gets zapped, those zaps somehow get distributed to the people who found it first or something.
Right. Well, now you've got me thinking, like, if we have, there's a cost to generating these things, right? It's not free yet, right? I don't think there's any service that's really free.
No, yeah, it's all, you need either a Midjourney account or like a...
Right, which kind of sounds to me like an opportunity to use money.
Yes.
So, like, what if there were like a bot where you could prompt via a Nostr post and maybe even get people to rally with zaps to get the thing generated?
Yeah.
So like a community generated, like, oh, I love that Cosmic, that's awesome, everything that Danny does with Cosmic is great, I'm going to give him 420 sats for it. And
I like that.
Gets generated and then gets shared back. And once it gets shared back through that API or whatever, you could kind of have the structure of it being part of, it's kind of it's not just repurposed content, but it's kind of like de novo content for Nostr, like de novo AI image gen content on Nostr.
That would be cool. And we've actually been working on something, it's our web AI library, where it basically just is a way of exposing our OpenAI account, but anybody can do an action on it and pay a micropayment. So we could use that.
Oh, yeah.
So
you're kind of already touching these themes.
Looking at it. But
is that probably something that, do you think you can get away with that, or does it violate
No,
TOS
I think it's totally fine. I don't see why not. I think it's our account. We pay for ultimately, if it gets used a bunch, it charges our credit card. Right. And we're just saying you can pay us to...
I see.
To we'll generate it with our account. I think. I mean, I should look.
Yeah, no, now that you say it, I think that's right. That makes sense, right? Like they're trying to be the API and they want to sell API access, but you don't necessarily have to. You call it Web AI? Is that the name of the project?
Well, the original project was because people were building all these AI apps, and it would be like, so it'd be one of two things. One, they deploy the app, and it's free, and it goes viral, and now all of a sudden they're hit with a $5,000 bill.
Yeah,
they're like, oh crap. The other thing is then they're like, okay, we'll just make it so that the user has to input their OpenAI API key into the browser, and then we'll use that to do the AI stuff.
I see.
And that sucks.
Yeah, that's.
And so what we were like, it's like, okay, let's have the user just do a micropayment, which is better. It works for Lightning users. So then the user just has to do a micropayment that gets paid to the Deezy backend. Yeah. The Deezy backend routes the call to OpenAI, pays for it in fiat. Yeah. And then returns it back. But there's still friction because like not that many people have Lightning wallets. Right. But we were getting there.
But I mean, what does it cost on average to do like an image gen? Let's say, I guess OpenAI must be the most expensive image gen.
So OpenAI's image gen is not as cool as Midjourney's. Midjourney doesn't have API access. And I think it's so small though. Like a single image is not that much. I mean, I don't think it's more than like a hundredth of a cent or something.
Oh, geez. So you could literally do this with like
a tenth of a
few
cent.
sats.
Yeah, definitely. To the point where it's almost.
That seems like a killer use case. Like both for, I mean, all of Nostr, image gen, and Lightning.
So actually, that would be a cool Nostr post if. Okay, so the account, I think this is where you're going, is the account actually just posts a prompt and a Lightning invoice. Yeah. And then anybody can pay it. And then once it's paid, it shows up.
But then also anybody can write that prompt to get syndicated out.
What do you mean anyone can write the... Oh, right. So you can write a prompt and tag at like... fund my fund my art. Okay.
And if it gets enough zaps... Then it gets funded and generated. And now like community, we did like a crowdfunding.
I really like that.
You know what I mean?
Okay, we can definitely do this.
And man, I think I found
because then that account will come with like all this super cool art itself. Yeah. And it'll be like, it's only gonna be 10 sats to generate.
It's nothing. People spend hundreds of sats for just nonsense posts because it's just like fun, right? It's just playing with it.
Okay, so there'd be maybe a single Nostr account to submit a prompt request. You would say your prompt into whatever we're calling this thing. That thing would then respond with an invoice, maybe reply with an invoice.
Like it would estimate how much it thinks it costs.
I think it would have a set fee.
Maybe a set fee.
Yeah, and then it would probably respond with an invoice. And then if someone pays the invoice, it'll respond with the image.
But if the invoice gets paid twice, then it just goes into the slush fund for future.
I don't think it would get paid. I think most wallets will not allow a double payment.
Oh, really? I thought it happens all the time.
Oh, does it?
Yeah, my understanding, and I would consider myself not an expert at Lightning, but this one detail I kind of went deep on because I made these videos to show people how to, just sort of click through the interface of Damus and connect wallet of Satoshi, which is kind of, generally useful. I happen to demo it with those too. But now I have everybody come on and issue me like 21 sat invoices on Nostr. And then I just pay them to kind of welcome them and show them how Nostr works and how Lightning works on Nostr. But then sometimes other people get to it and pay those first, and I still pay them. So I think
it technically the receiver can accept it twice. So it just depends on the receiver, what software they're running.
I see.
I think that's my understanding at least.
Right.
I thought the default for like an LND or something was that it won't accept a double payment, but there's no reason in the protocol why they can't. Right. It's insecure to do it for the sender, kind of.
Meaning the sender reveals identity?
So basically, the invoice itself has a secret, this pre-image or whatever. as soon as someone pays it, that pre-image gets revealed. And then if another one comes along, tries to pay it, and I think what can happen is, and if you're a routing node in the middle there, and you've already seen the pre-image to this secret here,
right?
Then you can be like, oh wait, I'm not gonna forward it to here. I'm just gonna take it.
Oh, I see.
And then I think.
But you'd have to be running the Lightning infrastructure as well. So
yeah, it's
happen to get the route.
You'd have to have a few things need to happen. And
so it's possible that
you don't want to be trying to pay things twice, because
right.
ultimately, if you do it enough, someone's going to figure out how to exploit it.
Yep. But anyway, I guess I don't know. I guess maybe there's some UX to work out. Like, is it an invoice or you could also do it without a formal invoice and just look to see how many zaps the thing gets, and people just know that, like, if it gets a certain number of zaps, then the thing will get generated, and you can just kind of look at it and be like, oh, this doesn't have enough yet, I'm going to contribute.
I like that. Makes a lot more sense,
just to kind of keep it simple.
Yeah.
But I feel like there's something at the intersection of, like, how Nostr works and how AI stuff would work and how Lightning can touch it all.
Yeah, because we can have AI generate these prompts, which is a fun thing to do.
Yeah.
So we could have the AI be pumping out these prompts, and it can maybe learn which ones are getting zapped highly.
Yeah.
And then which ultimate images get zapped highly or something.
So you're kind of like training the prompt to know how to, like, extract zaps from users.
Yes, but I think also would be cool if you redistribute the somehow can incentivize the people who are zapping the prompts. If the final image actually gets zapped, those go back to the people that curated it.
Oh, beautiful. Wow. How powerful is that?
That'd be
You're basically
cool.
like investing in the prompt and then recouping value in the result. If the result is valuable, that's a crazy, awesome idea.
I think what we would probably want is that there'd be two Nostr accounts. The first one spits out all these random prompts.
Mm-hmm.
And it's just, if you follow this account, it's going to spam your feed with all these prompts.
Right.
But the other account is, like, for the images.
Mm-hmm.
And so normal people, if they just want to see cool images, they'll follow the images account.
Right.
And the zaps from those get distributed back to the person who funded the actual image generation.
Right.
So now the curators can go and be like, oh, that's a cool prompt. I'm going to fund this one. I'll fund that one. Fund this one. And if those posts take off on the main account, that'd be cool.
But I think you've also got an interesting feedback loop here, which is, like you mentioned, cosmic is just a term that you like. And you've got kind of a feedback loop that if cosmic shows up in a prompt and the image gets generated, you're probably likely to pay it. So you could start to kind of almost machine learn on which prompts are causing which people to fund which results.
Yeah.
You kind of have, it's a little bit, the whole thing I've been saying about kind of the AI space is, like, nobody's really invented, like, a non-hired human feedback loop. So, like the RLHF stuff is almost every team working on RLHF hires people to do the human feedback part. And there's no, like, organic behavior that does the HF. But in this
with the
system,
zaps, it's a very interesting way of having that organic. Yeah. I also wonder, there would definitely be different themes. Some people are going to want all Bitcoin and ostrich art.
Right.
Some people are going to want Guy Fieri art.
Yeah.
And some people are going to want cosmic, meditation art.
Yeah.
And so how do we handle these different themes and stuff?
Right.
For the different audiences.
Right. Well, I think if you like with a lot of new products, I think it's best to just find, some group of people who care. So if it starts only as, like, the ostrich generator, that's probably, like, enough to get it started. Or if there's enough Guy Fieri fans or, people who like that that style, if you get dozens or hundreds of people gathered around the Guy Fieri account, they then understand what they hope to get out of it, and then they pull it in different directions.
Gotcha.
Because I think sometimes I was talking to Pablo of
not personally,
F7Z.
But yeah,
we were kind of chatting about this topic this morning because it's so easy to kind of build. It's so easy to like think, because we're thinking in these abstract programming platformy type things. It's easy to imagine the vastness that can be accomplished. And sometimes if you can kind of galvanize it to a single use case that just sort of doesn't try to show off how vast it is, but it tries to show off like how easy it is, then people say, well, that was easy. I wish it could also do this. And you're like, well, of course it also does that. I mean, it's vast.
So we need to get we'll try to get this little first version out.
I would love to play with this.
And then we can...
I have so many ideas for what I want to do with it.
Okay, cool. I'm excited. Now, I got to figure out how to get... So, the sparkling water is getting me a little burpy.
Oh,
yeah.
But your curation idea, you were talking about curation, and I think if you have too much stuff, then curation is valuable. But if you don't have enough, it's almost like cause the problem first, and then curation can solve it.
That's a great point. Yeah. So I think, we'll just start with
don't
some
overthink
cosmic prompts.
Yeah.
And I think what we'll do is just have this thing spit out potential prompts just like every 5 minutes or something.
Yeah.
And then anyone can go in and fund it.
Yeah. Yeah.
I like it.
It kind of reminds me, I don't know if you've read Eugene Wei's, he did a really good kind of distillation of what works about TikTok, kind of an analysis around sort of the dwell time and how the feedback of how many times you watch the thing loop and how often you swipe or follow, like what caused you to follow an account. He's just like picking apart all those mechanics. And it's really, in a sense, TikTok is only able to present us content that somebody else made already. But like the TikTok of the future should notice how we interact with a piece of content, like maybe a piece of art, and it should say like, oh, well, if you like that, I'm going to generate something else that nobody's ever seen before. But because you downloaded it to your phone, or you shared it, or you commented on it, or you funded it, we're actually going to generate more shots on goal or more candidates of things that you might be interested in. And so you're getting sort of the AI to adapt to your interest, to let you like take it in a direction that you're really, excited about.
Yeah, it's super cool.
This gives me a lot of optimism, because I've been playing around with AI stuff for a while, but I've always kind of felt like AI is such a centralizing force, in that, everything is an API and an API key, and like you have kind of like your providers who can cut you off at any time. If they cut your API key off, they don't like what you're doing, or you're making too much money and they want that. Whereas I think there, a lot of the experts in the field that I've talked to in AI seem to suggest that there's a bunch of good factors that would indicate we may be hitting some ceilings. So there's going to be like a lot of competition that catches up. There's not going to be like maybe Midjourney is really good today, but presumably like a Stable Diffusion or maybe a DALL-E or others can be, a good enough that it's replaceable, which then means, and maybe you can start to run it on edge computing, where you're like running it on your phone or running it on, either a relay, or maybe there's a new middleware. Probably not a relay. Everybody's going to hate me if I say run on a relay. Relays are for relaying messages, not for generating AI art. But maybe some middleware that can generate AI art as part of, just like that's their kind of single purpose function, but they're not like controlled. You can dispatch those queries to anybody who chooses to run on like a, generative AI protocol or something. So you might actually be able to push a lot of this stuff to a more decentralized way, and you don't have to depend on like single API providers.
Yeah, I like that. So is there a way to, you can see who zapped your post, right? I get notifications that says this person zapped you. Okay, that's great. Because then
that's
you can
the
reward.
Default.
Then you can reward the folks who
you can. That's
funded the image.
Default in, at least in Damus, is the one I use the most. They had I think 3 flavors of visibility. I think it was like public, private, and anonymous. And so private and anonymous, maybe private would not show up under, like likes or reposts, what are they, the reactions little line item. They have like zaps there, and if you tap on it, you can get a list of all the zappers and the amounts, and even if people write custom messages in zaps, so they'll show up there too. And my understanding is, I thought Will or somebody was saying that they wanted to make the zaps more like a kind one, so kind of like a real message, because it is a little frustrating to get it. Like if somebody adds a comment to a zap and they zap you with that comment, and you want to like thank them for the comment or reply to the comment, you can't, because it's not like a message in the,
it or something.
Yeah, it's not like a first order message. It's kind of the subordinate type of message.
Gotcha.
So I think there's a little bit of movement. I don't know at what stage it is. You know, things change fast, but I think there's a bit of movement to turn the list of zappers of a given post, you know, a given note, into notes themselves.
Very cool.
And probably like the UI can kind of still consolidate them in the way they are. But yeah, definitely public, to answer your question. So
nice.
Yeah, that's cool.
Well, there's more we could talk about with different kinds of Nostr events.
Yeah.
If you wanted to get into talking about this decentralized order book for ordinals and stuff, which is pretty interesting stuff. Like people are using Nostr for these ordinals marketplaces now.
Yeah, so I think that was, I forget when it was, like a month or two ago when we were hanging, but you had just begun some of that stuff. So you played with the ordinal stuff. You said about a year ago you were looking at it.
Just looking at it, following it. But then as soon as it launched mainnet and I started seeing the hype, I was like, oh man, I could make one of the first collections, and figured out, like, came across these astral goddesses, and I was like, oh, these are awesome.
There's just stuff you found on Midjourney?
Yeah, because I love just generating, really heavenly kind of goddess, and like God and very cosmic stuff. And so then came across this prompt for these like astral babes. Like,
is that actually in the prompt?
It's like the prompt is a beautiful astral woman bikini. And I was like, man, these are really cool. And so I was like, we're gonna do a collection. And so launched in basically, and then we had this lightning stuff. And so sprinted for a week to put together this infrastructure for paying with lightning, getting that the astral babe like inscribed and sent to your wallet.
Yeah.
Then, but also there's no good web wallets for this stuff, or there wasn't at the time.
Mm-hmm. And
so built a wallet, which we called NosFT, where it takes your Nostr key and it creates a Bitcoin wallet out of it.
So you're starting with your Nostr private key and putting it into like a Chrome extension?
So yeah, so it works best with Alby. So if you have your Nostr key in your Alby extension.
Yep. Do we feel like that's pretty battle tested?
Alby, I'm very confident in Alby. They're a great, they're very good software and good group. And it's definitely pasting, at least having a private key in the browser extension is much better than directly in the browser. Yeah. The best is Nostr Connect, where you have your key is maybe on, you don't want to be copying and pasting your key anywhere. You want to have it just generated once in one spot and then tap it or something. I feel like we're getting there.
Right. This is the Nostr Wallet Connect service from Alby? Is that the one you're talking about?
I think Alby's integrated that.
Oh, okay. They didn't build it.
They didn't build it, right?
Okay.
Someone else came out with the first.
Okay. I thought they built it. I didn't know.
I don't know. I think someone else came out with the first version of Nostr Connect. But what we did is we said, okay, Nostr key is just a private key. Let's turn it into a Bitcoin address, which is controversial, by the way. I've gotten some people don't like that, but
what do they not like about it?
Just some people are like, your Nostr key should be a Nostr key. Your Bitcoin key should be a different key. And I was like, well, why not just these are just to store small amounts of little collectibles. I think it's kind of a neat thing to have collectibles on your public. Again, I think NFTs are kind of dumb, but I can't ignore the market that just went crazy. Like people, for some reason, love digital collectibles. And
do you think they're mostly art aficionados, or do you think they're more like gambling use cases? Or
I think it's a combination of degenerate speculative gamblers wealthy people who want to show they're wealthy in an online setting and be part of like a crypto punks. People got really attached to having like a crypto punk as their profile picture, or a Bored Ape as their profile picture, because it was a way of signaling wealth, signaling part of a community. And they like being part of a community where, you know, you're all, yeah, maybe it's a community of degenerate gamblers or, you know, wealthy people who like to have parties.
Right.
But there's this weird social thing where it kind of just took off. And when this first came out on Ethereum, you know, I started seeing it, and I have a bunch of, you can look at my Twitter history. I was ripping. I was like, this is stupid. Right click save.
Right.
This is dumb. And it's just like still around, and the market just proved me so wrong. And so I was like, all right, well, now it's on Bitcoin. Like, I think this is here to stay. I mean, I'm not an NFT collector, but I thought this art was pretty cool. And then there are people that legitimately, you know, the other thing that's really cool about the collectibles is you do have some real artists that now have a new path to monetize, where they can actually come out with something cool,
right,
and get paid for it. And so, yeah. So anyway, I was like, you know, it's on Bitcoin, good enough for me. Like, that's gonna throw the reputation on the line, and I got excommunicated from a lot of the Bitcoin maximalist cult. But
was that because you were even just touching ordinals and inscriptions, or was it because they were just like, we don't want to have anything to do with you?
He's a scammer. They call me a scammer for pumping my project of my Astral Babes. So unfortunately, if that makes me a scammer, then I guess I'm a scammer. But I think that it's
is that the same set of people who are concerned about using a Nostr private key to generate a Bitcoin address?
There's probably some overlap. There's less pushback to that. I think more people think that's kind of interesting. Obviously, you don't want to store your cold storage on your Nostr key, but like small hot wallet, yeah, why not?
But are people are just mostly concerned about the hygiene aspect of like people who are new and may not understand what they're doing, and they might end up collecting more value than they realize on a key they don't really.
I think so. I think that's part of it. I don't really know. I can't really steel man the argument. I don't have a good sense of it. I don't know if there's a lot of people that really feel that way. There's definitely more of a steel man on why being part of ordinals is bad and inscriptions. There's arguments.
Because of the non-fungibility?
The first argument is that the way this ordinal system works, it's totally just made up. It's a way of tracking Satoshis that doesn't actually exist within the Bitcoin protocol.
It's just like everybody's got consensus that that's the way we're going to organize them.
Well, I mean, sort of. Like the people who subscribe to ordinals do, but then, someone came out with stamps, which is like a different way of... That's different. It uses... But somebody could come out with reverse ordinals where the numbering system's different.
Right.
And so, but the idea is like, it seems that ordinals, they're intuitive enough that you can reason that this kind of works.
Mm-hmm.
But the argument is that no, you're making stuff up. It's not actually part of Bitcoin, which is a fair argument. The second one is just that in general, a lot of the NFT market there was a lot of overlap from the ICO market.
Right.
And which attracts all types of pump and dump scam projects, rug pulls, things that suck in retail, pump up a project, dump it on unsuspecting people who thought they were buying something that was, going to make them rich. And there has been a lot of that in all of crypto, definitely in non-Bitcoin stuff. And so Bitcoin has preserved its reputation as that kind of stuff doesn't really fly on Bitcoin. But now it's like, okay, now there's NFTs, there's, ordinals on Bitcoin and inscriptions on Bitcoin. Are we just enabling this bad behavior? And you could argue, it's opening the door to that.
How do you feel about because it takes up block space that otherwise could be used for transactions?
That's the other part. Yeah, is that it adds more stress to the node operators. To me, this is, and in the past there have been debates on that Bitcoin shouldn't be a file system a place to store files. It should be a place for financial transactions that actually matter, which is a fair argument for how you want to use Bitcoin. But some people don't think money's like, they think money's a cool use case, but they like having fun more than they like sound money. And so I think maybe in the early days when Bitcoin was more fragile and needed to be protected, that was a better argument. Now Bitcoin is like very battle tested. It's an open protocol. So are you people going to come say that this is not the right way to use? Maybe you don't agree with it, but that doesn't mean you can tell people how to use this open system. And people have value. Some people really like that these, images get engraved on the blockchain forever.
Right.
And
it stores all of the binary data for the image. Like in inscriptions, you're actually storing all the binary data for the image.
Yeah, so you take
blockchain.
the full data JPEG and shove it into this kind of useless part of the Taproot signature section, so it was enabled by the Taproot upgrade because they removed the length restriction for these signatures.
Right.
For other reasons, because you might want like ZK proofs or stuff, but Casey kind of figured out you could store images in there, and so people started doing that. I think. Oh, and the other thing is we have Lightning now. So in the past, it was like, blockchain base layer fees are going up. Yeah, it's kind of inconvenient, but like you should be using Lightning anyway. And also some people think you want higher fees for a security budget.
Right.
I don't really subscribe to that argument. I don't think we necessarily need higher fees for a security budget, but it's 6 months ago, people were talking about how Bitcoin security is at risk because the on-chain fees are too low.
Right.
So
now the on-chain fees
part
are
of
too
the
high.
Astrobabe's mission was to come save Bitcoin by polluting the blockchain. So I think those are the main. And then the other argument is, this opens the door to explicit images, child pornography, stuff like that.
Right.
If that can become an attack vector for the state to crack down on node runners.
I see.
If that type of stuff is on Bitcoin nodes.
Yep.
The counter to that is that's always been possible because you've always been able to store data on Bitcoin just in a more expensive, less convenient way.
Right.
So
it sounds like you're like a little bit more agnostic to how people use it, but then you've been exploring. Did you built you were talking about like the order book? Like, did you build a marketplace for buying and selling these NFTs?
So we are working on this. So there's a super cool way to do a marketplace for these things where, so say I want to sell my stupid Astrobabe or my monkey JPEG. What I can do is I create, and all it is, it's stored, on a UTXO or whatever. I can create a transaction that I sign, this type of signature that has a specific way of signing it, so that where it's basically me committing to say I will sell this to anyone who can pay me $100 for it, and I create this partial Bitcoin transaction, and I just broadcast it out over Nostr, which we can get to, but you can broadcast it over anywhere, and then anyone who comes along and they say I like that deal, I think that Astrobabe's worth $100. I'm going to buy it. They can come in and construct the rest of the Bitcoin transaction that then fulfills the payment to me and delegates the item to them. And as a result, a single Bitcoin transaction gets published that facilitates that exchange. There's no middleman. And it also actually breaks this, it's a privacy gain, because now the more you can do these collaborative transactions, that you get benefits of privacy, because now
kind of a coin join type.
It's like a coin join type of thing, but these are kind of trackable because you can see the size and the signature types. But it's super cool way of doing a totally decentralized order book, because you can have all these listings and you just broadcast them out. And the standard that people are using is Nostr for this.
Right. And so you said you take is it a PSBT?
Yeah, partially signed. Yeah, exactly.
And when when you're using those, can you? I don't know all the ins and outs. Can you? You can specify where the destination is, kind of as a late binding.
Yeah.
Item.
Mm-hmm.
So the last PSBT that completes a set can tell the destination.
So it's just you can have competing, like if 5 people all like the deal, they can all make their own fulfillment of it, and then all 5 of those are going to compete to see which one gets confirmed.
Oh, I see.
Only one can get confirmed because you can only spend a thing once. But whichever gets theirs confirmed, they can have the trade executed in their favor. But yeah, you can basically, it's the way the signatures work where, yeah, it's kind of complicated, but the way the lister sets up the signatures is they know that they're going to receive $100 and that their ordinal is going to go somewhere. And then the buyer can come in and what they do is they put in like 2 inputs before the thing, 1 output that's like this dummy output.
Yeah.
And then they add their money as an input, and then they add their address to receive the ordinal. So they add like 3 inputs and 2 outputs and maybe a change output. And somehow it all comes together so that it's one transaction that does the trade.
Wow.
Yeah, it's pretty neat. It's super cool.
And are you, I guess I'm not in all the details of this, but like, are you pretty confident that there's not a lot of good ways to exploit that? Or
so there's interesting incentives that come into play. So one of them is that the first is that it enables, which is not a good thing. I mean, I don't really care. Who cares? But it enables wash trading where you can, because there's no middleman fee.
Right.
You can just trade to yourself and be like, oh, look, this thing sold, which by the way,
that happens on centralized exchanges too, right?
Yeah. People do that. You just have to understand that that's what people kind of do.
I mean, it would not surprise me if some centralized exchanges of NFTs reduce fees in order to allow people to do that, to make them more attractive places to trade, because you're like, wow, that thing is here.
Yeah, probably. I mean, you just look at the market. That thing's not selling for $1 million. Like somebody's doing something fishy. Right. But, it is what it is. And so that's one kind of, side effect of this. Another side effect is that in these cases where there's multiple people competing for the same item, whoever pays the higher mining fee is going to get it. So that's kind of an interesting market force where, and the other thing is so say I listed for $100 and now I realize, oh no, that's too low. I want to cancel that listing. You can cancel it, but what you have to do is spend your ordinal back to yourself.
Oh, I see.
To invalidate that transaction.
So you finish the transaction and point it to be received by you?
Or you just invalidate it by spending the input differently back to yourself.
Okay.
Which is a little clunky, but it honestly pretty this is, when you build on Bitcoin, you're building on a really, really solid foundation.
Right.
And so it's exciting that this seems like it's going to work pretty well.
Yeah.
I think we remains to be seen about, there's interesting stuff with gathering all these orders. How do you know people aren't spamming? I guess every order you look at, you have to validate it's a valid PSBT. So anyway, we're getting to that point because on our NosFT wallet, we're about to launch the marketplace feature where you can do this, where buy from the decentralized Nostr-based order book, list on that same order book.
And so this is a form of a Nostr client, right?
Yeah.
So I go visit a website that I can use Alby with my Nostr private key. I'm logged into a Nostr experience, right? But I'm browsing an order book for Astral Babes or whatever.
Yeah, for whatever people are.
Is it initially only you've got a few NFTs?
No, so someone else was first to market a month ago with this.
Oh, okay.
It's called Open Ordex. They just have no browser extension connection.
I see.
And you have to literally manually upload these PSBTs and stuff.
I see.
And so
just gonna make it very simple.
This guy started with the PSBT stuff,
Mm-hmm.
And I remember he tweeted, he was like, okay, we have the PSBTs ready. How should we do the order, like broadcast them out? And I was like, dude, use Nostr. And he was like, oh, no, this is great. So he did Nostr, which we were planning on doing. And so now we're also doing Nostr. So now our order books are the same. So when you open our site, nobody's listing from our site, but you see all the listings from his site.
Right.
And then so now you're going to have, it's just like Nostr, all these.
Yeah. So is there a new kind for the items in an order book?
There's a draft proposal for a new kind, I believe.
Okay. And how is that? I thought I heard that like you need 2 clients and 1 relay supporting it before.
Oh, maybe it's not a new kind. I don't know.
Or maybe just for any NIP. I don't know.
I think there's a draft NIP.
Okay.
I can't remember what kind the event is.
Okay.
But it's not a text. I don't think it's a text post.
Okay. So there's like a few. There's you and this other group, Ordex.
Open Ordex. And there's actually another one as well, I think.
Okay.
So this is
so it's kind of getting some momentum.
It's going to get a lot of. And ultimately, all the bigger exchanges, they're all using the PSBT stuff.
Mm-hmm.
And I think it's inevitable that they're going to have to open up start broadcasting over Nostr, which will be interesting.
the larger exchanges are going to have to.
Well, someone like Magic Eden, they're a big NFT marketplace. They've got into ordinals. They have their own exchange.
Oh, they do. Magic Eden supports ordinals today?
Yeah, so they launched the ordinals thing.
Oh, wow.
And they use the PSBTs, but they don't broadcast out their order book.
Right.
And so it's a natural next step that everyone's just going to start broadcasting out their order books.
Mm-hmm. Now they grew up as a centralized exchange, right? I think originally Solana NFTs.
I think so, yeah.
And now they're adding this, but are they going to be like fully? I mean, when you go Nostr, you sort of have a whole different set of trade-offs. You can't collect fees very well because it's pretty open, right? So does that
right.
It must sort of evolve their business a lot.
Yeah, it's disruptive. It's definitely disruptive. So we'll see. I mean, they might resist it. I don't know. You might do something where, like, I'm trying to think, could the person listing, maybe you could hack it so that the client, without users really knowing, the client will add an exchange fee.
I see.
So one of the things we're doing is our strategy is you can buy with Lightning. So you can buy with the Lightning payment.
Mm-hmm.
And then if you do that, then it'll go through our backend, and our backend will take care of doing this on-chain thing.
I see.
And we can take a small spread on just that Lightning payment.
Right. Or presumably, I mean, you have this other Lightning business of kind of as your node operation plus the ecosystem and scripts and stuff around it. So presumably you could make that your business, and you could end up scaling these things even in a highly competitive environment. And you don't necessarily need to take, I mean, if you can get fee on it, great, but you don't need to get fee on it because you have kind of another more like Lightning infrastructure business that could, the growth of Lightning should benefit you.
Yeah.
And so if there's like a good way to grow the ecosystem, it benefits you kind of from a fee perspective just in the infrastructure.
Yeah, exactly.
You can kind of like let everybody compete to make Lightning better, and you win.
And then we're like, well, we're right here,
Well, how do you think about, like, I mean, you obviously spent a lot of time in Nostr, but you kind of started kind of Bitcoin, then did this Lightning node stuff. Now you're sort of playing in Nostr. How do you think about what is Nostr to you and the company? Like, do you have more things you want to do, or it just happens to solve this order book problem, or are there other kind of Nostr experiments that you have in mind?
I think Nostr is really fascinating. Super cool. I mean, you can just see the viral growth of it. I'm so excited to see how new experiences come up, because now you can scale an app without having to worry about getting users.
Mm-hmm.
Right? You come out with a new experience, all of a sudden everybody can use it.
Right.
So I want to be in the ball game.
Yep.
So it's like, how can we do that? What synergies are there?
Right.
And yeah, we're running a relay now as well.
Oh yeah.
As of recently.
How's that? Are you using like any of the existing relay software?
Nostr.
Okay, yeah. The one from Ricardo?
Yeah.
Yeah.
And we just followed the Zebedee. Andre from Zebedee
Uh-huh.
put up a nice guide, so we just followed that and have it running.
And
so
it's just like super out of the box, or do you do some customizations?
It's very out of the box. What we did is, and it's paid, it's 10,000 sats, but we also added everyone who I was already following or who was following me got grandfathered in.
Oh, I see. So it's a paid relay, but you kind of bootstrapped it with a bunch of free, like some trust graph of initial users.
People that I know, yeah. So,
and do you want anything custom there? Or you think like you just want to get some hands-on experience operating a relay?
Just want to get started with it. I think, just learn from it, stuff like that. We actually we just want it because for this marketplace thing we're doing. Also just start thinking about, it could be interesting for communities because what we're seeing in ordinals is, you have all these factions of communities that they all like the same Bitcoin frog or whatever.
Right.
And they all collaborate on Discord. And they make friends on Discord. They like, doing degenerate activities and talking crap to each other. And
right.
People make friends and they have fun. But Discord is kind of an experience, it's a chat experience where you have to be in there or else you miss it.
Yeah.
And so there's kind of it's kind of a stressful situation because you feel like you always need to be on.
Yep.
If you're not on, you miss it. And I think some of these communities might benefit from a more Nostr Twitter type experience where you can have, so maybe is that in the form of like a relay, or is there other ways like badges, a way of filtering your Nostr feed
right
to switch between your different communities instead of jumping between your different Discord servers?
Yep.
Maybe you're on NosFT, which is going to be a general purpose Nostr client eventually, switching between your different communities. So for us, like this, this marketplace, it's kind of a marketplace at first, but everyone's got a Nostr key now too. So it could be a place for communities to chat and discover stuff.
Right. Yeah, I think we haven't done enough kind of thinking around what should like that feed experience look like. Like I think we just sort of like most feeds kind of just adopt the everything of kind one into the thing in the order they were received. And
there's a lot of I feel like I don't have a good way of, it's very much a live feed right now.
Yeah.
Where I want to have more topic-based stuff.
Right.
And a good way to see that. Yeah.
And it seems like you could, I guess like a lot of people are hesitant to do like discovery service. Like if you're going to be part of a community, you need to figure out that community exists. And so how do you find that? Is just somebody writing a note about it, or can you sort of otherwise discover communities somehow, and who decides which communities are available to discover, right? So there's some questions that I think so far people have deferred trying to solve because they have centralizing forces to them, and I think there's a lot of people trying to keep it like super clean.
And there's there's lists right now. I saw there's a way to do lists.
Oh, is it right? I haven't seen those.
There's a way to do lists. So you as a any user can create a list, and the list is a post that has a bunch of pub keys in it.
Oh, cool.
Which is kind of cool. So then you can see the list that someone made. So if I published a list, so one thing is, anyway, I don't want to keep talking about the Astral Babes, but like I'm thinking that like one of the things is we made a Nostr account
pumping your bags, huh?
I know. Yeah, exactly. There's ways to do lists. I'm curious to learn more about badges because I've heard, but I'm not familiar with if that's catching on at all.
Yeah, I played with them a little bit. I think I think the intention is that you can kind of use it to curate a bunch of people that all kind of mutually opt into being curated in that way. So think of it as almost like you're a member of a society, and the society accepts you as a member, and you accept membership, right? Just kind of I think it's meant to be two-way, at least the interface I used for it.
That makes sense for like Discord type of community. I think that to me seems like the most natural way to do it.
Right.
Because the other thing that we can do, we were thinking of is if people have their different inscriptions on their Nostr based address, you can just see what inscriptions they hold and automatically surface those communities as an option.
Right.
And then the client, I guess, can do filtering.
Meaning, so if you own an Astral Babe, then you are granted potential admission, and then you can...
I think it would be more just displaying the posts, I guess, of, if you have a Bitcoin frog and an ape and a babe, then it's like those are the 3 communities you can cycle through on your website.
For consumption.
For consumption.
Okay, so you're kind of like browsing
I think browsing the
Discord
people,
community.
But then there's also a question of when you post as a Nostr user, you just post it.
Yeah.
But is there a good way of saying, I want to post this, but I want to post this for like the frog community or whatever, or for this other community that's like the steaks, people that like cooking steaks community or something.
Right. Yeah, it seems like having some control over that would be important, like where you intend the post to go. But like there's a lot of people who tried to adapt centralized systems to have like multi-posters, right? Like if I make a video that I want to post on TikTok, I might also want to post on YouTube Shorts and actually need to subscribe to a service to kind of do both of those. But in this world, you could just like, anytime I post this type, I don't know what the metadata is, but if I post this type, then I want it to go everywhere, all my communities plus my main feed. And if I, or if it includes a certain other piece of metadata from some other client that I'm using that is meant to be going everywhere, right? There's so many of those surfaces we haven't really been able to explore in centralized services that probably, if a bunch of experimentation is done, we would figure out, there's really cool ways to use these. We just didn't know about it because too much friction.
Probably some tag or something is what we need, right? Yeah, because I was thinking about how it would be cool to have a very spiritual community on Nostr, because the Nostr is, it's a lot of Bitcoiners. Just, it'd be cool to cultivate like a very positive, and even just social media in general, I think is like not the most positive place, but I want a place where I can get just like really wholesome, scripture verses, like Bible verses, stuff that's really uplifting, and have that on a dedicated feed and connect with other people who are posting about that. But then I was like, well, if I'm part of that and I slip up and I get in some Twitter argument, I can't have that showing up on someone else's spiritual feed, when I'm slipping up to my ego. So
right. Yeah. But I think that's what's cool. I think in Nostr, because everything's both connected and open, you can try new things we've never tried before, right? Like you don't have to say that a single post goes everywhere, but you can subscribe to a feed that you consume when you're in that mode. I even think of like, we haven't really seen this yet, but I think of like algorithms I don't see as evil. I just see like an algorithm that somebody else decides for me is evil. But if I get to decide and it's open source and transparent, I can see, I'm like, hey, I'm feeling kind of down. I want some uplifting messages in my life. And if that's spiritual or religious or puppies, like it could be whatever that is to me. And I can just go like, almost like go to the app store, though not a centralized app store, but the app store for algorithms.
Yeah, I like that.
Give me the like uplifting things. It's probably mostly puppies for me, because like most of the things that I end up zapping are puppies. I'm like channeling my wife because she's always sending me puppies.
Nice.
But you could imagine having those things, that it's tuning it to what you want at the time. Or you're like, look, I'm about to go out, to the batting cages or something. I just want to like get like amped, right? Whatever you're looking for. But it's not just a hashtag. It's more like my following with an overlay for what I want right now. We haven't seen that yet.
Now, that's what I'm wondering, does that happen on a client? Does it happen on the combination of a client with like some backend or a relay, or?
I think a client could do it today, but would end up, it feels to me like it needs to be a piece of middleware, but I don't know. I wouldn't call myself an expert at this.
Yeah, I think there could be like a dedicated service that is, maybe you ask it, I want I am this person and I want this type of content, and it somehow recommends follow these, or like here's a bunch of posts.
Yeah.
That is different than the native like client to relay kind of dumb communication.
Because I think it's nice to keep relays simple, and they just like they store messages, they send messages, like that's all.
Yeah, it's almost like a dedicated, separate recommender type of thing that might have its own curation system that incentivizes, people to find cool stuff or something like that.
And you could imagine we could collectively rate those too.
Mm-hmm.
We'd be like, this one is a scammer. I try to get puppies, and it always sends me like it shows me cryptocurrencies or NFTs. It said it was going to give me puppies, and it gave me astral babes.
Yeah. But, interesting.
Yeah, but I think it's some sort of middleware. But that's probably why we haven't seen it yet. We're just still getting the basics of relays down and the basics of clients together. I guess some clients, like, have you played with Primal at all?
Yeah, just recently.
Yeah. So they have like,
really cool,
really well executed experience. And they also have taken an opinion about actually having discovery and trending, and
they are doing that, which is really cool.
Yeah.
And just seeing how many users are on Nostr is really cool.
So I really like
excited for that.
the way they think about that and the way they present information. And I recognize that there's some like, what I think some people might call an ideological compromise, because they're making discovery decisions on your behalf. But I also think it's like, it still serves the needs of what Nostr aims at, because I could go on primal.net, I could, discover and find a bunch of stuff, but then I've got those accounts, I choose to follow them, and I can go then on Damus to actually consume them. So I'm not like locked in to their discovery service. They're like one of an infinite pool of discovery services.
I definitely agree with that. Yeah. I think discovery is it's a need that that a good centralized service could do well.
Mm-hmm.
And once you find it, take it wherever you want.
And there could be multiple competing centralized discovery services. Maybe we collectively rate them. Maybe we collectively fund them with zaps, or, all kinds of different. I think like competition is really what matters. That they're like they compete with each other.
Yeah.
So
I think there will be.
Yeah.
But yeah, I'm very excited. We have our Nostr client is this NosFT website, and it's fully open source.
Mm-hmm.
So if anyone wants to help out, contribute, it's got some ideas, fully open source. So we're excited to just experiment with this kind of stuff.
So NosFT is all the client software, and you run a hosted version of it, but you also have just anybody could take it and launch it on their own website.
Anybody can grab the code, fork it, slap your own brand on it, and host it yourself.
Mm-hmm.
And we actually were thinking of offering that as a service or something like that to people. But
so like run your own order book, or
it would be a client, so you can like deploy the NosFT site at your own domain.
Mm-hmm.
It'd be the same site,
right?
Just with a different domain. You could edit the file so it has your own brand on it, and now you have your own marketplace.
Right. And do you imagine what would people do? Because the whole ecosystem, as we were discussing, kind of opens up the way maybe fee taking would work, and even branding and trust may just live in different places. So do you imagine somebody would, like, I assume that you're kind of doing it to learn about it and explore, but the next person who sort of wants to adopt it and launch it on their own website, would they have a credible way to be able to profit from that? Or do you think that they would just do it for similar like curiosity and kind of exploration and learning purposes?
I don't know. I think like that's a good point. I don't know. What, like, if you could edit it so that any listing like puts yours address in as a middleman fee or something.
Mm-hmm.
But then I don't know if people would use that, or maybe, I don't know. We don't know how it's going to turn out. I think for us, it's definitely experimental.
Right.
Open source, I think. Open source is fun.
Mm-hmm.
And I like to do stuff with open source front end, proprietary back end.
Mm-hmm.
I think that's kind of a cool and practical way to try to do a business.
Right. Right. Have you, it reminds me a little bit, I don't know if you've been following the GitHub proposals and bounties. Do you know about this?
What about it?
So I think Jack Dorsey had originally proposed
Nostr based Git.
Right. And I think it was like kind of one of the more substantial bounties that were out there, and it hasn't really gotten picked up. And I think maybe Pablo had weighed in yesterday or the other day and said like, oh, I figured somebody would pick it up, so I didn't bother with it. So, but I think it's like a substantial enough bounty, but it may be that the project is like almost too ambitious for a bounty, because I guess like the whole bounty ecosystem, you kind of end up doing a bunch of work, speculative. You don't know if you're going to get the bounties. You might, if it's like an hour, you can do it. But if it's like 2 months worth of work, you might not be willing to do that in such a speculative way. So kind of the risk reward trade-off, and it's different. So I think yesterday Jack was writing a note about how he was rethinking kind of how that should be done, or kind of just
interesting.
Yeah. But I wonder, because I think there's examples. My understanding is, do you know GitLab?
Yep.
So my understanding is GitLab is like an enterprise software on-prem version of the.
Oh, interesting.
And I kind of could see a version of like an open source GitHub, but like you said, there's like proprietary backend. Maybe it's proprietary enterprise sales channel and brand.
Mm-hmm.
So you could
hosted version. That's the other cool model is the as you said, everything's open source, even the back end, but there's a hosted version that you pay for.
Right. But then is there enough momentum, like, GitHub's got runaway momentum with what it is good at. Is there enough of an additional value prop that you could provide, by having the stuff open source or portable to competitors, or like other just like ecosystem value? Like maybe everybody in Nostr would, I guess maybe Bitcoin would be one of the first projects, if such a thing existed, that would just galvanize the movement.
Yes. So maybe you got to start with just one project.
Yeah.
Where you just, but then, I mean, that's not where this main development happens on GitHub. So maybe you need like a mirror that mirrors every commit or something like that.
Right.
Or rebroadcast every commit.
Is there any reason that you think it couldn't or wouldn't?
No, you should be. I mean, if a commit, the data's publicly available through GitHub, you could just broadcast it to the Nostr-based version of it. I mean, I say this simply. I don't know. I'm not a Git expert, so
right.
I guess you would need. What would be the hard part? The file storage. Someone needs to store the Git history, right?
Yeah. Have you seen any file storage? I've seen some people talking about file storage as related to Nostr, but I don't know sort of what the state of discussion or possibilities are there.
I don't know. Amazon S3. Good old Jeff Bezos.
Well, people are talking a lot about, I hear BitTorrent mentioned again and again in that discussion, and some aspects of the BitTorrent protocol that people have kind of, I think, wondered out loud. I don't know that I've seen a lot of projects built that do this, but where people sort of wondered, could you take some of the kind of architectural decisions that were made around how BitTorrent works, but fit them into like a Nostr addressing system or something?
Yeah. I don't know.
Someone
just figured something out on how to do torrents as inscriptions on the Bitcoin blockchain.
Oh, really?
I heard something about that.
So like the torrent, like the seed magnet address thing?
It's somehow like they shard it up and the seed is then inscribed for the file or something. But I guess Bitcoin's not a great place to store a big file. Like It's not a place to store. It's not going to work as a place to store a bunch of big files.
Right.
But I don't know.
So you guys are sounds like you're pretty serious about this NFT marketplace on Nostr. Is that kind of like
we're about to launch it. That's what a few engineers have been working on.
Is that everybody on the team is kind of all hands on deck focused on that right now, or?
Pretty much the engineers have been sprinting on the NosFT marketplace thing. We're going to see if anyone cares once we launch and then reassess where everyone's focused. Meanwhile, I've sort of been focused on across the board, all the random stuff we're doing.
Mm-hmm. What does a launch look like?
Honestly, I'd just merge it to prod and then probably ping our Discord and say, hey, you can buy and sell now. See if people like it. And yeah, I mean, that's me as an amateur founder, just I don't really have it all planned out that well, but
no, I think sometimes
we like to just kind of launch. I kind of like the soft launch
stuff. Yeah.
Cause I like just kind of doing soft launches because first of all, we don't have we've so few users anyway. So just roll it out slowly, and we don't have a great QA system too. So someone's probably going to find some bugs, and luckily people are kind of good with feedback. And
so you've got already the Discord where people are engaged, and they might be kind of early candidate users of NosFT.
So the early users of NosFT are the Astral community. All those are holders. And because there's Chads as well too. There's Astral Babes and Astral Chads.
Oh, okay.
Yeah. So those were some of the first people, because that was sort of the overlap of my audience of people on Twitter was like Bitcoiners who know how to use Lightning. So there's kind of some overlap there of those people getting on the NosFT website. But we'll kind of see. I mean, I think it's going to be pretty tough to win on the marketplace because some big players are coming in. But we have this Lightning advantage that I think could be cool.
Big players meaning big centralized NFT players? Yeah,
just, we've already seen Magic Eden come in. I think OKX announced they're doing something with it. Binance is about to launch something. So we'll see. But I do think that the decentralized order book is going to win because of cuts out. And so we're going to be one of the first movers there. And then I think Lightning is going to win in some respects, and we're going to be a first mover there.
Are the big existing providers going to take the Nostr approach for broadcasting messages?
I don't know. I don't know. We'll see.
And so this is this
they
days,
do
weeks?
As I mentioned, they do the PSBT stuff already, but not the broadcasting.
Right.
And yeah, I'd say we're within days of launching like the first. But like we've done on our development branches, like our buy with Lightning.
Oh, cool.
And so within days, I would say maybe like next week, we should have a first version out.
Right.
But honestly, like, inscriptions, they're kind of stupid. Like, don't spend your money on this stuff unless you're like really unless if you're you shouldn't be. It's not like a good thing to get into really. It's kind of cute. They're kind of fun. It's kind of like buying a Beanie Baby,
right,
So
well, my interest in it, and the reason I think I keep asking a question about it, is that if it's enough momentum, there's enough people. Even if it's dozens, hundreds, doesn't have to be like everybody. But if there's enough people who do it and play with it and care about it, it could show us how order books should work on Nostr, and that's much bigger than just Astral Babes or just NFTs. Like that could be the way that like a future, I don't know, like an Airbnb service needs somewhat of an order book, or actually maybe even better would be like an Uber like service really needs something of an order book, in the far future. I don't think we're like there next week, but
yeah, I definitely think there's something there. I'm just excited that people are coming onto Bitcoin and they're coming onto Nostr and Lightning. Also that we're getting to experiment with AI, because that's one of the things we have is these the Babe chat. So now each Astral Babe has a Nostr account, which then you can chat. If you own the collectible, then you have this goddess guru in your pocket who will chat with you and give you guided meditations and stuff like that. So it's just been fun for us to play with the AI stuff. But I do think that bringing folks on to play with Nostr, Bitcoin, Lightning, AI is exciting. Marketplace shows how to do marketplace. I think that it's a good start for marketplaces, and we'll see maybe with like rideshare or something like other apps that are beyond social media, if this can help provide stuff like that.
Right. I mean, I wonder, I guess maybe backing it off. I know I sort of went really far with it to like those like real world use cases I think are much tougher to handle. But like, what if you back it off and like you figure out order books around NFTs, but then you go a few steps ahead and figure out like, I don't know, like a new type of coin join or other new types of privacy tools that could be built if you get the order books right?
Yes, I think so. That's interesting. Yeah. There's something like coin swap or something, which I think may use a similar mechanism. I don't totally know how. That's a really good point. That I think. Yeah, I don't see why there couldn't be like a Nostr based coin join or.
I thought I saw a project that kind of intended or purported to do that, but I wasn't deep enough to actually research it and understand if it was working or not. But
yeah, I would need to think about that, and there's definitely someone out there knows.
Right.
Yeah.
So a few days away from launch, you get this thing out. Maybe you get some QA, you get some feedback. Let's say it could either really work or not really work, and maybe kind of keep iterating. But how do you think about the next like weeks, months, quarters of kind of work?
So for me, I think that this, there's a lot of experimentation, and this is a sprint to kind of get something out, see if we can actually get some traction in this growing market, see if this market of stuff actually takes off.
Yep.
And if we can provide some key infrastructure for that. And if not, a couple months from now, things aren't going well, we can reassess and be like, okay, is it worth really spending much time on this, or should we go back, focus on the basics of the Lightning routing business, stuff like that. There's actually my background's in like enterprise Bitcoin wallets. And so we actually have a product in the works for fee optimization, where it's just like a typical software as a service product for these exchanges all over the world where they do a high volume of withdrawals. And there's just a question of what fee rate do you pay? And now that the Bitcoin fees are starting to spike again, this is becoming a legitimate cost on their balance sheets. And so there's a right way to do fee estimation where you don't guess, you actually you set as low a fee as possible, and then you bump it up as necessary. And it just requires a little technique, a little software. And we actually have some software that can do this, and we're just polishing it off and getting ready to kind of just see if this is another thing we're going to see if it catches on as like a SaaS product.
And would you sell that to wallets or to exchanges?
To any like large exchanges or custodial wallets that do big volume of batched sends. So like ATMs and exchanges and stuff like that. And basically what you give them is they save money on their on-chain fees, helps the on-chain fees be most efficient, and they can have better reliability on how quickly their transactions confirm.
Right.
So there's another thing we're going to see. We're basically like seeing what's really going to stick.
Yeah.
We have a couple irons in the fire here.
Yeah.
And
what about this AI Gen Nostr project we just were jamming on? Is that like just like
I'm down for it.
What's the scope? Is that like a few days of hack project or a week or two?
Yeah, I'd say a couple days, maybe a day or one really good day
nice.
of hacking around. We could get our little MVP out because I have some existing code around. Yeah.
That's cool. I want to play with it.
Yeah.
I've got my sats loaded up. I'm ready to.
All right. So should we recap on what that project is? I think what it is the AI suggests prompts. You zap the prompts. If a zapped prompt reaches 110 sats, maybe we'll say 10 sats or whatever it is, then it comes out and generates the image. And whoever zapped it gets paid.
Yep.
Okay.
And maybe if it's hard to get good stuff out of an AI to generate the prompts, maybe you can crawl some initial prompts, or a few of us, you could bless our accounts, and I'll contribute a bunch of just creative prompting.
Cool. Yeah, I like that. Yeah, I've got some cool ones just from ask Chat GPT. I said, make me a image prompt that will blow my mind. And it came out with something. Imagine you're in a like cosmic forest of glimmering lights with like it was a whole paragraph of just different.
Oh wow.
And it was pretty good. It was pretty cool.
Yeah. That's awesome.
Yeah. So maybe we'll start with something like that. But
cool. Well, this has been fun. I'm glad we got a chance to hang out and chat about, I mean, geez, we covered a lot. We covered your whole background and in baseball and in CashApp and BitGo and Lightning work. And it's Deezy, right, is the company?
yeah, it's our company, Deezy.
DEEZY.io. And that's
Yep.
everything. All these projects we talked about are all Deezy projects.
All this crazy stuff that is all over the place, but there is a higher plan at work.
Yeah.
I don't really know what it is, but it's working.
Yeah. That's great.
We'll see how it goes.
Cool. Well, thanks for making the time to come out and hang.
Thanks so much for
Fun.
having me. No, yeah, I'm really glad to be here, and yeah, thanks for the time.
Cool.